I know better to do. I know how to do this thing. Hello, Shauna. Good to see you. You got to see my browser instead of my actual Google Meet window. But it's awesome because I fixed my Google Meet video problem. I looked it up on the internet. Who knew? And I've got James Sutter back to talk to me. We're going to have a good episode. I haven't been streaming lately, and that's because I'm doing edits for my book, Infinite Archive, and it's just been a very busy spring. So when the edits came, I'm like, when am I going to shoehorn these in? So that's now. So, so I won't be, and I haven't been able to produce any podcasts either because that also takes time. So,
right.
This
well,
happens.
I feel honored that you brought me in.
Well, of course. The problem is I should see this coming. I should see the point where I say I can't do anything but write the book at this hunk of time.
Right.
That would be like responsible and good for planning.
It is hard though. It is hard because you're always like, oh, well, I can do it. You know, that's one of the reasons why when I first went full-time writing, I started keeping a spreadsheet of just, what I did every day, how many words I got, what else I did. And I kept that really consistently for like 5 years.
Wow.
Because it really helped me see, you think like, okay, well, I can do 1,000 words a day or whatever. And so I'll just say, well, that's 20,000 words a month. You start doing this back of the envelope math. And then when you actually go look at the historical data for like, how many words did I actually produce in a month? You start finding all those days where you did more or less, or something went wrong, or you had a sick day or whatever. And I found that having that sort of data made me a much more accurate predictor of how long things would take, which was especially important when I was doing a lot of freelance, because then I could look at that and go, okay, here's the deadline that I need if I'm going to get this project done. Here's how much work I can take on. Yeah. And it also was really useful in other ways too. For like the first year I looked at that and went, oh, I'm not giving myself nearly enough days off. Like I just wasn't taking enough vacation. And so I started tracking that too. Like I basically made myself, being self-employed, I basically made myself a timesheet that I had to sort of fill out. And it was useful. I've moved away from that a little bit, just because it was kind of breaking my brain. But I got, a solid 5-6 years of data that were really useful.
That's great. I need to write that down. Do a spreadsheet. And then I'll have to write down, actually remember to update the spreadsheet, which I cannot promise I do.
That is the thing. But it is really useful, and it's really satisfying. And, you can also see how things change from project to project, because when somebody asks me like, oh, how long did it take to write, your first YA novel? Like, I don't really know unless I go back and look at the spreadsheet and go, okay, well, it took me, 4 months to draft it and another 3 to edit it or whatever. And then I have an actual prediction. But otherwise, everything, it could have been months, it could have been a year. I don't know. Like, time is wibbly wobbly.
Yes, definitely. So we're gonna get started officially. You guys who listen to the Patreon and support via Patreon just got to hear all that about the spreadsheets.
That is a useful tip, I think, for freelance writers.
Oh yeah, no, I wrote it down, man. We're gonna remember that thing. We used to have a spreadsheet that was like we called it the magic spreadsheet. A friend of mine coded it, and it was you got points for consistency, not necessarily volume.
So yeah, that's important.
If you did if your goal was 250 words, but you did 1,000, you got a couple more points. But doing like every other day 1,000 words would get you fewer points than every day 250. And so the goal was to encourage consistency. And
it's a good idea.
Yeah, that helped for a little while. And then every time some people in the community have reinvigorated it, brought it back. I don't know. But I just haven't, again, remembering to input my stuff is the hard part. But
well, and you got to change up your methods sometimes. Like, things change. A tool that works for a while you can get used to, or it can become counterproductive. Yeah. Like for me, counting word count was really useful in the beginning, and then at some point started to become really counterproductive because I would start seeing like days that I'm revising as like bad. I would feel bad about those because like, oh, well, I didn't produce any new words. Like the word count number didn't go up.
Yeah.
It's like that is bananas because revising is easily half of writing. And so like I could tell that I was starting to optimize for the wrong metrics, right? That's the classic, like whatever you measure is the thing you get good at. And so I started measuring like, well, how much time do I work? You know, how many writing sprints did I get? And then at some point it was just like, did you write today? Yes or no? You know,
Yeah.
that is more useful in some ways. But I guess we should probably start. Have we started recording?
Sure. Yeah. We are recording. I'll make it sound good because this is good stuff. I don't want to lose it. So
yeah. No, this is hashtag content.
That's right. Getting into the actual content, I need to remember this is it shames me to say this out loud, but it's not a surprise to anybody who listens to this show. I am very bad at introducing people. Like I don't even read bios. I'm like, hey, it's my buddy James. He wrote a book. Check it out. Let's talk. So I'm gonna start doing it properly. Here.
Great.
Okay. So
do you want to go for it, or do you want me to introduce myself?
No. I'm set. I got
okay, I'm
info
ready. I'm
here.
ready. Hit me.
I got an assistant who earns his money. He's like, do you
you
want
too.
a bio for James? I'm like, yes, please. Okay. James L. Sutter is a co-creator of the Pathfinder and Starfinder role-playing games. He's author of young adult romance novels Dark Hearts and The Ghost of Us, which we're talking about today, as well as the fantasy novels Death Heretic, a finalist for the Compton Crook Award for Best First Novel, and The Redemption Engine, which won the 2015 Scribe Award for Best Original Speculative Novel. When not writing, James has performed with musical acts ranging from metalcore to musical theater. But have you done metalcore musical theater?
Not yet. I think the closest to that. No, yeah, I haven't done metalcore musical theater yet, but man, it's on my list.
Okay, excellent. But we are here to talk about The Ghost of Us, which is coming out in the US next week, and in the UK it's already out.
Yeah!
Yay.
Woo!
And I'm just glad to have you back.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's fun to be back. I feel like last time we got a lot of good writing advice out there last time, and I remember you had pinged me later about my. I had said something about like every novel starts out as a pile of garbage, and you can write a pile of garbage. And then I remember you pinged me like 2 months later, and we're like, I'm still thinking about that. Like that's useful.
It was the tone of your voice because it was like an epiphany of, I can write a pile of garbage. I can do that.
No, exactly. So it's one of those things that it is useful to remember. Like it is encouraging.
Yes. Gonna pause for a moment and say hello to chat. We got Shauna here and Wire Duck who says 50% of tech support is waiting for the client to leave the room so you can Google stuff. Indeed. Underpope is a foster for many, many cats, and Underpope is dealing with a cat issue before joining us. The Kids Are Asleep is here. Welcome, Valerie. Wire Duck says hello. And then, let's see. I think that's everybody. Okay, Kimmy's peeking in. Good. And Valerie Valdez, a.k.a. The Kids Are Asleep, says, James is too cool. We are not worthy.
Oh, thank you.
So first, let's talk about the book, because you and I are really good at getting off on tangents. They're really good tangents, but let's make sure we talk about the book.
I'm sure my publicist would be very happy that I actually talk about the book. So yeah, the new book, The Ghost of Us, is another queer young adult. This one is actually sort of supernatural romance. So it's set in our world, but just outside of Seattle, and it's all about a teenage ghost hunter who finds a ghost. She finds the ghost of an upperclassman who died the previous year. But before he'll give her the evidence she needs to become a famous ghost hunter, his condition is that she needs to take his little sister to the prom. And so it's a whole supernatural fake dating thing, kind of like Ghost meets 10 Things I Hate About You. And it's, a story, it's a rom-com. There is some heavy stuff in there. It's kind of like half coming of age and dealing with, grief, because there is it's about ghosts. There is death,
Yeah.
but it's also very much snarky and funny. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So that's my second young adult romance novel. My first one, Dark Hearts, we were talking about last time, which is a male romance all about falling for the boy who stole your chance to be a rock star.
Yeah.
So these two kind of go together. Like they're not, it's not a direct sequel, but it's new characters, but they're very much set in the same world. That world being Seattle,
Yeah.
which is where I'm from. So
Right.
it's got big Pacific Northwest vibes.
Excellent. I need to write down these questions as they come to me. This is bad ADHD brain.
It happens.
Yeah, sorry. One of my favorite romance tropes is fake dating, but you've got something slightly different because only one of the people knows it's fake dating.
Right, right. I mean, it's a little more like almost a Cyrano de Bergerac sort of thing, which is something I had said at some point where I was like, thinking about the 10 things I hate about you thing. And I was like, well, it's more Cyrano de Bergerac. I'm not sure that a novel from like the 1800s is like the best comp to use. Like, I think publishing, they generally prefer a little more recent.
Yeah, but Cyrano that's a timeless story.
It's classic.
They just
Yeah,
did
exactly.
another one. Depressed
Yeah,
the hell out of me, but they just did another one. So
Yeah. Well, and so it's very much that kind of thing. And of course, the crux of the novel is as the ghost hunter begins not seducing, but like trying to draw the little sister out of the shell, like she starts actually falling for her. And then it becomes this question of, can she date this girl that she actually likes under false pretenses? Especially because the ghost, the thing tying him to Earth, his unfinished business, is he wants to like make sure his sister is happy. So as she starts getting happy, like through this whole scheme, he starts to disappear. And so then the ghost hunter has this question of like, well, do I keep dating my new girlfriend knowing that it'll make my ghost disappear? Or do I tell her the truth, come clean, make her unhappy, and then have them both be mad at me? And so kind of whatever she does, like, is she going to lose both her chance at love and her chance to prove ghosts are real? So it gets pretty snarled pretty quickly, as you might imagine.
yeah, yeah. Of course, I'm wondering like I'm kind of questioning the brother here, thinking that throwing a fake romance at his little sister is the thing that will make her happy.
Oh yeah, he's like... very much a bro. Like he's got good intentions, but like he is like sort of a like bro, homecoming king, popular kid. And like I think over the book you sort of learn to love him, but like when it starts out, the main character being a social outcast, like is very much leery of this guy and of his sort of idea that like, oh, just like setting the two of us up, somehow that's gonna fix your sister's problems. Yeah. Like she doesn't really buy into it. And of course it does kind of bite them all in the ass. But he's doing it. He is doing it out of a legit desire to sort of look out for his little sister after death, the way he feels like he did during life. He was always sort of dragging her along from parties, trying to hook. There are two parties trying to like hook her up with folks because he just wanted her to be happy. And so he's still trying to do that from beyond the grave. And he's still about as successful as he was, yeah. Which is not great.
Yeah. So we were talking about editing before we started recording. As I mentioned, I haven't been streaming a lot lately because I've been head down in editing, and I'm hating it as usual. And I was telling James, I think I technically, besides your massive experience in role-playing games aside, I think I technically have done more novels than you have, but I'm looking to you
certainly. Yeah.
for editing advice, because every time I get an edit letter, I go, how? And
I used to be...
People are asking me, like, how much more do you have to go? I'm like, I don't know. There's no way to answer that. I could come across a chapter and go, oh, this one's pretty okay. I can knock off 3,000 words in like 10 minutes because this chapter will stay in the book, and the next one needs to be rewritten completely. So I don't even know how to say that, and I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, and I used to, in addition to role-playing games and writing, like I used to edit the Pathfinder novel line for Paizo and later for Tor.
right.
So I've written a lot of edit letters. We did like 40 novels or something that I sort of commissioned, saw through the entire process. And so I've definitely been on that side of the desk too. And I know I know how easy it is to write like, this isn't working, let's try something different here. And how hard it is to be on the other end and get that and just like lie on the floor.
Yeah.
But for me, editing, fortunately so far, has not been super tough because I outline really thoroughly. See, I can't discovery write. I'm terrified to discovery write, because the outline is where I do my discovery writing, and that's like the most painful 3 days of the whole process. Because anything is possible. It feels like, everything could be the wrong move. But once I get through that, I feel like if the outline is really solid, then I'm also I don't know that I'm a slow writer, but I'm not fast. I'm not one of those people who can just like sit down and write, a novel in a month. Like I am more slow and steady. So my stuff tends to not change a whole ton between first draft and final. And I also end up going over it a lot before it ever goes to my editor. Like it goes through beta readers. I've gone through it a bunch of times. Like I really try to shine it up as much as I can, which does sometimes bite me in the butt because I, polish something super hard and then the editor says, ooh, actually you do need to change this big thing. Like The Ghost of Us had significantly larger edits than Dark Hearts because originally there was a whole love triangle element. I knew that my beta readers were like fine with it, but didn't love it. And then I gave it to my editor and she was like, I don't think this is working. And we kind of went back and forth. I tried to revise it to like make it stronger. And ultimately I had to just take it out because it just wasn't right for the book. It was sort of a distraction from the main romance of the two characters.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of tough, but ultimately I was able to convert the love triangle into just like a really strong friendship, which had fulfilled a lot of the same functions, but worked a lot better. But anyway, so my editing process, I don't know that there's any magic to it, except that, for my beta readers, what I do is I get everybody's feedback. I try to sort of like put it into a spreadsheet and see like if multiple people said the same thing, if people had differing comments that kind of cancel each other out, etc. Like I really sort of go through that to decide what I actually want to listen to. But then when it comes to the edit letter from the publisher, I tend to go through and do the easy things first because that's satisfying to knock out those comments where she's like, oh, you need to change this paragraph. Done. And then the big stuff, normally first off, I let myself sit with it. Like, because I think you get an edit letter and you want to scream like, they just don't understand what I'm doing, you know? And so you need to just like say nothing, go for a walk, lie on the floor and like give it a day or two. And then if you're still not quite sure where it's at, like, for this last one, I called and talked to my editor and sort of talked through like both any potential fixes I had. Like I really like to, if an editor says this isn't working or, X isn't working, I try to always come back to them with, well, what if I did Y? Would that solve the problem? And like get them to sort of sign off on the potential change before I do it, just to save myself some work. And I find that like that, thinking it through, almost always, I'll be sort of super upset about a change right until I figure out how to make it work. And then I get excited about it because it's like, oh, well, actually, like this will make the book better. And like, you just have to know that you're going to go through that process. And then, yeah, once I've talked through with my editor the changes that need to be made, and I'm sure that I understand, because sometimes an editor will be like, this isn't working, and I think you need to do X. And the answer is that they're correct that it's not working, but that particular answer is not the solution. And so you have to like pitch them on another answer. But yeah, once I have that, I just make a big punch list of everything that needs to be changed. And then I just kind of try to roll through it and just very mechanically hit the next one and the next one. And then I always go back afterwards and try to go through the book for one last revision pass or one last just sort of proofing pass before I turn it in.
Right.
But yeah, I tend to be pretty quick at it, and I tend to not have a ton just because I've usually found the problems like while going through the outline, you know. I've had a lot longer to sit with my choices. So it hasn't been a huge problem thus far. But it can, I mean, there's no getting around it. Like it sucks when this book that you've spent a year trying to make perfect, has a big old sponge left in the patient, and you have to go figure out how to open it back up and like pull that out. Like,
yeah, exactly. No sponges in the patient.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, I actually do most of those things as well, except for the outline, which I'm still very bad at. And I'm starting to discover, you know what, it's okay that I'm bad at it. It's not a conscious decision to be bad at it. It's just all the cool ideas that make up a story come to me in the action of writing. I can't force those ideas in an outline. I can say, a battle happens, but then who does what, where, and how cool is it? And if there's a sudden betrayal or someone gets injured and I didn't plan for it, it's going to keep going because I like that choice for the novel.
Right.
Even if it starts to, break.
Well, and I think the thing for me is that, like, I get around that by sort of doing the actual writing in the outline in a way of like, my outlines get longer and longer until, it's not uncommon for a novel to have like a 5,000 word outline or something, or more. And so what I try to do is if I've got a thing where I just say like, and then there's a battle here, most of the time I'll try to really force myself in the outline to think through at least the basic beats, because like the more I can do that in advance, the better. But also it'll help me find those little moments of discovery ahead of time, right? Because for me, writing an outline and writing a scene are not that different. So the more I can flesh it out, the better. I love when I get to a chapter where I've already basically written it in the outline. I just have to add in the dialogue, but that's just how I work. Like, all respect to the people who can pants it all the way through, but I'm in some ways a very lazy writer, and so like, it's not just measure twice, cut once. I want to measure like 13 times and then just like write the book as efficiently as I possibly can, because writing books is hard, and like I don't want to write the same book 6 times as I figure out like where it's headed. Like, I need to know in advance exactly where I'm going at all times.
It's really funny that you call that laziness.
Well,
I mean, it's not like preparing, making sure, like, you don't look at somebody who's about to cook a meal and say, oh my God, they already got all their ingredients out and put them in order on the meal. How lazy can you get?
I know. But like, it just seems more time efficient to me. Like, I was talking to, Robert Jackson Bennett, who I think is an incredible author. I'm always shocked that he discovery writes as much as he does. And, he'll talk to me and he'll say like, he'll turn in a novel and then get edits back and then just be like, yeah, so I just threw it out and rewrote the book from page 1. And I'm like, I don't think I have that in me. Like, I think I'm not sure I could do that. Especially because one of the problems that I have is that when I write a scene, I start to see it really clearly in my mind. And so revisions can be really hard because I start thinking, but that's not what happened. It becomes almost like a memory.
Yeah.
And so like, it's weird, even like after I do revise, I have these like alternate universe versions of the book in my brain. That they can sometimes be a problem. There'll be stuff where I don't even necessarily remember, like, oh God, is that still in there?
Yeah.
You know, did I cut that scene?
Yeah, I have that problem too with some decisions that you make to fix things, and you're like, okay, it's fixed, but your brain's like, you know what? I'm gonna remember the first thing you did, and afterwards it doesn't matter so much. It's
Well,
just,
I used to. I remember having that problem a bunch when we launched the Starfinder role-playing game. Like, I would be demoing it for people at conventions, and somebody, would have the book and open it up and say, "Well, that's not how this rule works." And I'd have to be like, "Look, I have like 17 different versions of that rule in my head, and I don't remember which one made it into the final product.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna wing it."
those of you in chat, if you have any questions for James, let us know. So I wanted to ask, you've written a queer YA book about two boys, and now you've written about two girls. Why did you decide to focus on girls this time?
I just wanted to do something a little bit different, and I don't know. I like writing different characters, and there's always the danger. Like, there are certain things of when you write somebody who's not exactly like you, like the farther afield you get, the more sort of dangerous it gets, particularly in the current sort of publishing landscape.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like we've got to be able to write characters who are at least somewhat different than us, or else your books get real boring really quick, like to you and to the audience. And so, I hope I did a good job. I did my best to get research and feedback and all those things. And also, I did sort of stack the deck in my favor a little bit by Kara, the main character, is still very similar to me in some ways, in that, like, or at least to my background, in that, she is a, bisexual teen living in the suburbs outside of Seattle who's desperate to be famous and get out and like make something of herself because she's kind of a nerd and an outcast.
Right.
Like, that's just me as a teenager. It just happens to be that I'm male and she's female.
Yeah.
So I feel like because so much of that stuff is similar, I felt pretty confident writing her voice. But at the same time, I still had, fortunately, had a number of my beta readers are queer women who were able to help me figure out, like, okay, well, this doesn't feel right. This does feel good. Like, this feels a little bit male, but also is really funny. So there was a lot of back and forth, which was really helpful. But that's always the case with, beta readers or authenticity readers. Like, but yeah, I wanted to do something a little bit different. And the next book I'm working on is two boys. So, like, I'm certainly not against going back to that well. But yeah, I don't know. I just like to. I mean, the fact that I am suddenly writing queer young adult contemporary romance after 15 years of working in adult science fiction and fantasy should probably show that, like, I really like to jump around. I like to change things up.
Yeah.
So I look forward to finding out if I did a good job or not. Which is actually, it is interesting how much, especially around gender and sexuality, I feel like people really internalize their own experience in a certain way. And so it's interesting to see, like, I had, even in response to this book, I could see, like, queer women who were like, this is totally my experience, and queer women who are like, this doesn't this is clearly not how lesbians really are, TM, and I think that is a thing. And I ran into that somewhat with my previous book, but I think people are less likely to tell a bisexual guy that he's writing bisexual guys wrong. But I think people have like a hard time in the same way with, like, teens in general. Like, I've had people respond to my books where it's like, because there is a certain amount of sex in my books. Like, it's not super explicit necessarily, but, like, I think my experience was that, like, people were totally having sex in high school. I was having sex in high school. And then I know other people who, either didn't until college or beyond, or people who started in middle school, right? Like it's all over the place. And I think,
Right.
yeah, right. And I think that's sort of the joy of fiction is you're exposed to a bunch of different, um, like perspectives. But I think it can be hard and a little bit gatekeepy when people forget that like not everybody had your exact childhood,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Definitely. Um, Sorry those who got caught in the ad break. I meant to run an ad earlier and I forgot because I'm out of practice because I'm focused entirely on edits. Um, yeah, sorry. I had another question that just kind of left my brain.
This is what writing does to your brain,
No
kids.
kidding.
Like this is
I think I've written like 4,000 words of new stuff today, just throwing a new chapter in to
wow.
make connective tissue to the next part. I mean,
That's amazing.
I wish I could write like you because my books right now kind of have the murder mystery kind of framing where there's a sci-fi adventure and the core murder mystery happens inside the sci-fi adventure. Sci-fi adventure is staying pretty similar. I don't have to
Yeah.
change much there. The entire murder mystery needs to be rewritten, and that's
Oh,
scaring the
God.
hell out of me. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just trying not to worry, but yeah, I'm worried anyway. One thing I keep forgetting to ask my guests is, what are you reading these days?
Oh, geez. What have I been reading? I just finished Empire of the Damned, which is the new Jay Kristoff vampire fantasy book. It's the sequel to Empire the Vampire, and it's still super fun. I love like Jay just writes sort of like dirty, funny, like gritty fantasy. But he does such an amazing job of writing these twisty plots where I truly don't know what's going to happen. I don't know which characters are going to live and which ones are going to die. And it's just really refreshing to like, because I feel like you read enough of a genre, you start to be able to see certain conventions and like certain tropes, and you sort of know how things are going to work out. And I love that with Jay, I never know how things are going to work out.
Yeah.
And so that was super fun. And then let's see. I recently read, I mean, I've also been reading a lot of nonfiction recently. Like I just read one the other day that was called Bitch on the Female of the Species by Lucy Cook, I think. And it's all about how patriarchy has sort of shaped evolutionary biology and like sort of all the information that's been quietly left out of the prominent theories since the time of Darwin sort of forward, and
Yeah.
how a lot of things are that we take as sort of standard are just wrong because men cherry picked answers to fit like a Victorian perspective.
Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. So yeah, I've kind of been all over the place. Also, throughout there's a horror novel that I read, I guess months ago now, but I'm still thinking about called Leech by Hiram Ennis. And it's just the weirdest gothic, but also sort of Lovecraftian, like weird, twisted. It's also queer, but it's bizarre and kind of unlike any other horror novel I've read in maybe ever. So highly recommend. Think plague doctors and alien symbiotes, and that's kind of all I'll say because I love that as I read the book, I kept every few pages. It was just like, what is that? What? Oh, wait, what? Like, but in a way where I did feel like I eventually understood what was going on. So I love that kind of weirdness. Like I love weirdness in a novel as long as it all ties up in the end. Like I think a problem I sometimes have, I don't know if you run into this, is like I'll be reading a book like a new weird novel or something, and I'll be
Sorry.
just loving it. All of these unexplained, bizarre like allusions to things going on, and it's so creative. And I'll be devouring it, and then I'll get like to the 2/3 mark, and I'll suddenly be like, I think that this author is discovery writing, and I don't think they know the answers to any of this. I think they don't know how to land the plane. And then
Yeah.
I'll get to the end of the book and go, shit, they didn't know how to land the plane. And it makes me so mad because I feel like I love it's sort of that whole mystery box idea. Like I am absolutely susceptible to the mystery of wanting to know how everything works. And you don't have to give me everything, but you have to give me some sort of payoff. You can't just never explain anything.
Yeah.
And that's where I really break with some of even the very popular new weird authors. I won't name names, but there's been a couple of very famous books where I've gotten through it and I've gone, that author has no friggin' idea like how any of this works,
Yeah.
and it just makes me mad. Like I want there to be an answer. I don't need to know it, but there's got to be an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I've recently read two books. One of them I finished, the other one I didn't, where it took me a while to articulate what I didn't like about them. And because I talk about writing on my show, I want to talk about that, but then I worry I'm going to crap talk on people
Yeah.
who are just, trying to make a living writing.
Right, right.
But in one, I think I've developed this bad habit of, in anticipating where the author's going, I subconsciously write my own what's going to happen next. And when it doesn't
headcanon.
happen, I'm like, sometimes it's cooler and that's great. But sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I liked my idea better.
No,
The
I
hubris
know that.
involved is embarrassing, but that happened.
Well,
I got excited about a book and it just did not land where I thought it would, and I'm just kind of annoyed.
No, I understand that, but I also always I really encourage folks to like meet the book where it's at. Like something that I learned, especially working in the game industry for so long, is that people would see that a book was coming out, would get excited about what they thought was in the book, and then they would get the book.
Yeah.
It would be or read the description of the book, and it would be different than what they thought it was going to be. And then they're 1-star reviewing it. And it's like, that's not a review of
Yeah.
the book. That's a review of like, you thought it was going to be something else, right? Like if, so Viggo Mortensen announces that he's got a new movie and you assume it's an action movie and it turns out to be a romance, like, don't give it 1 star because
Yeah.
you thought it was going to be something else. Like, rate it on its own merits. But that's why I think we talked about last time, like, Goodreads, just don't do it, friends. Like, if you're a writer, don't read the reviews, or do it very seldomly. Like, it's just going to break your heart.
Yeah, I don't read reviews anywhere, actually. We do have a question in chat.
Yeah.
Kids Are Asleep says, do you find that you tend to come up with characters first and then figure out the plot that happens to them?
Yes. And so I think that actually my writing got so much better once I developed this process that I use now. And all my books are just about character arcs. I come up with the character arcs first, and then they drive the plot. So basically, for every character in the book, and like every relationship between characters in the book, if I can, I sort of try to figure out what the arc is. Like, what is the lesson this character learns? How do they grow or not grow? Like, what is the change? Because I think that is the beating heart of any novel, is characters changing. Like, that's what keeps people reading. And so what I do, like the way I outline my books now, is I make a spreadsheet with sort of a 7-point structure for each character arc. And I sort of think through like, okay, well, where do I want this character? What do I want them to learn? So if it's about the protagonist needs to learn to trust people, then I'll know that my end point, point 7 is character trusts people. My starting point then has to be, the opposite of that. So it starts at character doesn't trust people. And then I sort of break down that progression into like 7 distinct beats. And then I do that for every character. So not just the main character, but like the love interest or the best friend, whatever. And often I'll do it not necessarily for that character in absentia or in a vacuum, but that character in relationship with the protagonist. So like my spreadsheet will say like, okay, what is the relationship the protagonist has with her mom? And so maybe like the relationship at the beginning of the book is she really resents her mom because she feels like her mom is controlling and babying her and whatever. And then by the end of the book, I want them to sort of appreciate each other, like to have worked through that conflict and understand each other. So then I will make that an arc and I'll split that up into 7 beats. And then what I do is like I do this in a spreadsheet. So I'll have, 6 different characters or relationship columns and 7 different points. I will then print that out, cut up all those cells into little pieces of paper, and I will spread them all out on my floor. And what I'm trying to do is I will try to combine them in such a way that I can fit all of those beats, which I know need to be in there in order to make all the arcs work. I'll try to fit them into as few scenes as possible. So rather than giving every beat its own scene, I'll try to squeeze 2, 3, 4 different beats into the same scene. So I might and oftentimes, sometimes I'll already know what the scene needs to be and try to figure out how to just get those character arcs and emotion in there. And sometimes I will let the arcs determine what the scene is. So I might say like, okay, well, I know I need, a beat for the romance. I need a beat for the character's relationship with her mom when she's still like, it's early on in that relationship arc. So she's still grumpy at her mom. I need a beat of feeling betrayed by the best friend. And then I look at those things and I say, okay, well, what scenario could like hit all those? And then it's like, okay, well, maybe, the mom drops her off at the roller rink for a birthday party, and the mom does something really embarrassing. So like that's that beat. But then like the popular kids make fun of her and the best friend decides to like sort of save herself by joining in the mockery. So that's the betrayal. And then maybe the love interest stands up for her. So that's like the spark of interest there, right? And so like I'm making sure that that one scene hits all those different arcs and like is moving everything forward at all times. So like and then I'll go through and just sort of like condense, and that's how I outline my books. And I'll even use that for stuff like comic books and things that I work on, because I always try to make sure that there's an emotional arc for every character. Because even if what you have is a giant like space battle, like, and it's lasers versus zombie aliens or something, like that action scene is still going to be better if you know what's going on emotionally inside all of the characters and like where they're headed, right? Like, because like, yeah, it's a firefight, but if one of them is worried about being a bad parent and the other one is crushing on the other and the other one is like worried about being replaced on the crew, like that's going to come out in their mannerisms and the way they act and the way they speak, and it'll both constrain you in a good way because it'll sort of tell you how they need to respond to things. But also, I just think that as humans, like we're social apes, and so we all like fundamentally care about characters. Like we read sometimes for wonder at world building or whatever or ideas, but more often it's just gossip, right? Like we just are wired for gossip. So like make sure that all your characters have emotions going on.
Yeah, my old agent, who is now an agent again. If you're looking for an agent, check out
Oh,
Jen
really?
Udden. Yeah, Jennifer Udden is an agent again. So I'm pushing everybody who's searching for an agent to go check her out. But yeah, most of her comments were, what is the character feeling on this page? And
yes.
yeah. I think sometimes when you're not doing major surgery to fix your plot, just going through and asking, what is your character feeling? Also, what other sense than sight or sound can you put on this page?
Yes, that's huge.
Almost every page, and that would change your book radically. I'm always going up to the deadline. I never give myself time to do that.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a good idea. Maybe I'll remember to do that this time. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and something I also try to think about that I'm not always great at, but like uh, the question of like, why does this chapter have to go, not just in the book, but have to go right here? Like,
Hmm.
how does this chapter and what happens here prompt the next chapter? Like, how is there a state of flow where like everything leads to the next thing? Which can
Yeah.
get complicated because sometimes then you start swapping stuff around and you go, oh, this chapter would actually be better here. Oh no. Like it
Yeah.
can all get real messy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm at the end of my questions. If anybody in chat has any more questions for James, please put them now. Otherwise, I'll ask you where you can be found online.
Yeah, no, you can find me. My website is jameslsutter.com. You can also, I'm on Instagram a lot these days. That's become my new social media drug of choice. So just James underscore L underscore Sutter. Or I am still on Twitter at James L. Sutter. That place is a trash fire, but we're all still keeping warm. Um, and yeah, no, the new book is The Ghost of Us. It's out now. There's also an audio book. It's available all over the world. And if you do happen to get the audiobook, I got to write the intro music for it again, which was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's just one of those little things that with Dark Hearts, I asked where does that music come from, and they were like, oh, we just pay a service to like give us music, and I was like, can I do it? So they've let me twice now do the audiobook intros, and so that's really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I am done here, so you can find me at merverse.com. I am most active on Twitch right now I'm not active anywhere, but mostly Twitch. I'm trying to get more involved with Twitter. Not Twitter. I'm going to start this all over again. I don't know what I'm doing. Social media, I'm mostly active streaming on Twitch. I do peek at Instagram and TikTok on occasion and even sometimes post my own things. Although I do feel very when they make memes making fun of millennials for being on TikTok, I'm just like, yeah, I'm the next generation above that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, it's fun sometimes. And yeah, my book is, I think, coming out next April, I hope. And that is
Nice.
Infinite Archive. So you can pre order now. But,
Also, hold on. I'm gonna plug your Patreon if you
oh,
don't, because you were saying earlier that like the bonus stuff that we had talked about before this recording is on your Patreon.
right.
And I think we gave an excellent tip about spreadsheets and writing progress and how I use that both as a freelancer and as an author. So if you want to hear the scoop, sign up for Murr's Patreon.
James L. Sutter, better at promoting my own stuff than I am. Thank you again for being on the show and for promoting my stuff, James.
Hey, thank you for having me back, and thank you to everybody for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to I Should Be Writing, the longest running writing podcast in existence. This episode was made possible by the Fabulous, who support the podcast via Patreon or Substack. Join the Fabulous at patreon.com/mightymur or mightymur.substack.com. Theme music provided by John Anelio. Art provided by Numbers Ninja. And podcast hosting provided by Libsyn. This episode is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 license. You can find all of my books and podcasts at merverse.com.
I should be writing. I should be submitting my next draft, but I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who. Yeah, I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who.